we are is called the Commons. This is sort of the central area that sort of connects all of the different wings of the facility. We have three major wings, and we're going to walk through all of them. The first one at that end is called the Norton Center for Blue Biotechnology. This was made possible by the State of Maine R&D bond that was passed by voters back in 2007. There was a competition for that, and we were very successful, happy to have won $4.5 million to begin to build that. The rest of the funding for it came from private foundations and private donations. So that's one wing, and we'll talk about what's going on in there when we get there. The middle wing was financed through the American Recovery and Reinvestment Act because of the stimulus package. A certain amount of that, those funds went to the National Science Foundation, and again it was a competitive process, and we won a $4.9 million grant for that. This, you can kind of get the idea that this started the first one, kind of leveraged the next one, and then that helped us get the third wing, which was from the National Institute for Science and Technology, part of the Commerce Department, and that's a regular, has been a construction grant program that's been going on for many years, but we were only one of 9 places that won that year.
You got a big sign in the driveway.
We do, yes. We have many signs, and it's really important for us to let people know that this is in many ways, you know, because of taxpayer funds that we were able to have this kind of facility. So the second wing is called it's got a long name for short. We have to say Oceans and Climate, but what it is the Center for Ocean Biogeochemistry and Climate Change. And so most of the work that goes on in there is looking at the relationship between the ocean and the atmosphere and the sediments and what's going on at a global scale in the ocean at the moment, and how that impacts everything else, all the other ecosystems, not only in the ocean but in the planet as a whole. The third wing is called the Center for Ocean Health, and that is really looking at ecosystems in the ocean and what's driving change that's going on there, how conditions are changing, what does that mean for the food web, and how it all works together. So the three are really very interconnected. That's the idea of the whole facility, to make it an integrated space where, in fact, one thing very much is involved with the other, and I can show you that as we walk around.
So they were built at different
They were all
stages.
built, well, the groundbreaking for this whole campus
was
in September 7th, 2010. So in 27 months, it all happened. But it was accumulating. The first funding came in 2009, and then we started in 2010, and now this is the completion of this stage. The campus is going to grow. We hope that we'll have an administrative wing with an auditorium and exhibit space and a library. There's going to be an education facility of its own further back here that will have classrooms and possibly student housing. Then the shore and dock facility is already in. We have a seawater pumping station. I'll show you some of that downstairs, that's bringing seawater up to the Center for Ocean Health for the experiments that they're doing there in what's called mesocosms, which are large aquaria, and they can create conditions in those aquaria that they can then see what's happening. An oil spill, for example. What happens if you add oil to certain kinds of seawater ecosystems, what will happen there. So anyhow, we therefore have a whole lot of individual labs working together here. The focus of the lab is really at the level of the microbial life that's in the ocean, and what we're discovering here is that microbial life, which is 99% of what's in the ocean water in terms of biomass. As you know, what we see, fish and dolphins and all this are a very, very actually small percentage of the life, the biomass that's in there. That is what we're studying, is that microscopic level of life in the water, and how it is actually driving a tremendous amount of the processes that are going on in there. So it's microbial oceanography with global implications. That's sort of looking at what what that relationship is. So walking around here is going to seem like I'm going in circles because we have stairs and elevators and up and down and across, but let's just try to walk through each wing, each floor of each wing, and then I'll take you to the basement of this floor of the Center for Ocean Health so you can see the seawater stuff. So, Bob? Any other questions at this point? No? Okay. What's been fun is this whole project has been happening in stages, and the first group of scientists moved from West Booth Bay into the first wing, while the second wing, we were doing the blasting for the second wing. So we had science, and yes, solid, and we had science going on at the same time as construction was going on. That happened again for the third wing. So it's just been a real circus in many ways. I mean, and it's really been terrific because all of the crew has been, it's been a really neat partnership because the construction crew and the scientists have been essentially working side by side for 2 years. So it's been great.
The blasting was doing a distraction.
Yeah.
Is this your conference room?
No, I can show you that. This is sort of what we have currently for an auditorium. It's meant to be a more open common space. The staff themselves contributed funds to make this terrace area, which isn't completed yet, but it's kind of our outdoor lounge at some point, and it'll be really great to be able to spend time out on the water. The building was designed to give everyone a sense of the water as much as possible, and I think you'll get that idea as we walk further.
Who was the architect?
There were 2 architects that we worked with, WBRC in Bangor and Perkins and Will in Massachusetts, in Boston. So they were the architectural part of the design team. What was also really great about about that whole design process was it was very hands-on with the scientists. This was done many meetings of where do you literally need the plugs, where do you need the faucets, what do you? So it was done for each scientist met with the architects so that their lab could be designed the way that would be the most appropriate and effective for them. It's also designed in a way that it can grow, sort of modular, and you'll see inside when we get in there what that's like. Okay, so we have, this is just the lounge area for the cafe for our staff, and it's a space where everybody gets together quite a lot, and then we'll just go up the stairs. Hi, David. I just wanted to say a quick hello to the representatives from the press.
All right. Hi, press. How are you?
Hi, press. This is David Coit. He's the chairman of our board of trustees, and we're taking a quick walk through ahead of the ceremony later.
Well, welcome to our big day. I think this is one of the best stories in the state of Maine.
Yeah, well, David, you've been sort of overseeing this as chairman for now since
the 5th year.
Yeah, it's the 5th year, so it's been on your watch here that all of this has happened. I was saying that the growth of the thing happened so quickly, really, 27 months from groundbreaking, when we had 250 people outside in the mud, actually, all the way to this. So it's
27 months ago, we're sitting out here in the mud. But there's a lot going on here besides just this building. I mean, this is the cornerstone, maybe, of the next phase for Bigelow. But we have expanded the board of trustees. We've added an advisory board. We have a new relationship, as I think you probably know, with Colby College, which is a very strong academic relationship. There's so much going on here. We've added new senior scientists to really enrich the base of this. This is a world-class scientific basic research organization, and so part of the investment is in the people here, in addition to the bricks and mortar. But the bricks and mortar helps.
How many non-nationals are there working?
Oh, I would say probably out of the current 15 scientists, I'd say 5.
Yeah, I think we have 5 different nationalities represented in the group of senior scientists, and more coming. I mean, we're in the hiring phase right now. Yeah, no, this is a real magnet. This puts us very much on the map for people all over the world to come to Maine. Very, very excited about it. Yeah, thank you all for coming.
We're just going to do a quick
Appreciate it.
walkthrough, as I like to call it. And
Good.
I'll figure through all this. Square feet. It's
You're good at that.
Over 60,000 square feet. Yeah. So that's our mission here. So we can keep going. Thank you. Okay,
Thank you.
we'll see you later.
Okay. Yep.
All right. All right. So the upstairs of the first wing has several labs in it. We'll just walk up, tell you what it is when we get there. Okay, this is the flow cytometry center. This is called the McIsaac Facility for Aquatic Cytometry. A number of technologies were developed in this facility before it moved here, of course, but it's actually led to a spin-off company called Fluid Imaging Technologies in Yarmouth. They developed here a way to sort cells out of ocean water, and not only sort them and count them, but to get images of them as they flow through in front of. They essentially put a laser beam through and are able to individually select cells that are microscopic. I mean, they are the kind of samples they're working with here. The individual cells are about 1/5 of the width of a human hair. So this is very tiny stuff. Each of those cells contains its own genome. It's a whole world to explore. So they're able to do that here. And flow cytometry is used in biomedical applications as well. But you've got your sample really easily there, and you're not trying to get a piece of the ocean and count the cells in it. This is what is able to do that. So that's a very key technology for the next thing, which is up here. This is the best way to see it, I think, at this point, with the sunlight beaming through it. This is the first facility of its kind in the world. This is called the Single Cell Genomics Center, and what is done here is basically bioprospecting. It's looking at inside cells that nobody has ever seen before, because most of the cells in the ocean can't be grown in test tubes or petri dishes. They are too, we can grow about 1 to 1.5% of what's out there. The rest just won't culture. We haven't been able to culture it yet. So 98%, say, of the life that's out in the ocean has been unculturable and unavailable for research. This facility has developed and essentially pioneered the way to take the cell out of an environmental sample, not out of a test tube, straight out of the ocean, and we get sent samples from all over the world to do this with. And then, again, using flow cytometry, isolate that cell, get inside its nucleus, get its genetic material, amplify that, and be able to sequence that. So that is the sort of the step that we couldn't do before. It opens up the resources of the microbial ocean in a way that's never happened before. So what can you find there? Possible ways to develop biofuels from genes, different sources of energy. There are some cells out there who are able to use energy completely differently than sort of terrestrial life does. Be able to go very, very deep and find microorganisms that have been evolving for millennia that we never even knew existed before. It's sort of opening a window on genetic resources. Obviously, biomedical possibilities, drug discovery, and so forth is another area. So why this is all behind these kinds of glass and everything, we don't. Clearly, when you're working with microbial genetics, you don't want to contaminate it with anything. So the air is filtered, everything is behind appropriate levels of anti-contamination technology. The robot is what actually manipulates the individual tiny wells with the cells in them and so forth. So when this is running, it's a lot of fun to see. If any of you ever want to see it in action, just let me know and we can set that up so you'll be here when they're doing it. So,
What does it mean to be culturally whole? Does that mean that it will live?
grow. Yeah, it can grow.
Reproduce?
Yeah, actually, it's like a plant.
Artificial environment.
Yeah, it's like a plant, it's like a
Why
house
is that so
plant.
difficult? I mean, 98% of it can't.
Yeah, it can't because we don't know we take it out of the ocean, it's growing there, blooming, it's fine. Put it in a test tube, try to put the right stuff in there, and it won't grow. Or something else will grow that we didn't even know was in there. So it's a very, the step of being able to do that at all was actually developed by the person for whom the facility underneath us is named, and I'll show you that in a minute. It's a very important thing to have a library of algae, of microbial organisms that we can research, and we have about 3,000 to 4,000 strains of algae in culture downstairs, and people have come to us and ask for it to do research on, for aquaculture, for medicine, for so forth. And that's a tremendous resource. But it gives you an idea that we've got this resource, and then there's so much more out there that we haven't been able to do. A lot of the scientists are trying to figure out what the thing needs to be able to grow it. But if we can get to the point where we go out to the ocean, get what we need out of the ocean, then we don't have to.
Now, is this just the first few meters of the ocean, or are you trying to cultivate?
Well,
things
now
from
that's
great depth?
perfect. Okay, come down here. We have a new facility that's just getting started. One of our new scientists is part of something that's called the Deep Earth Academy. Well, it's Deep Earth Exploration, and what she's doing is actually part of the scientific ocean drilling program, which is going down to the sediment on the ocean floor and then drilling down much further to be able to see what's living in the rocks down there. There's water flowing in cracks in the rocks in the ocean crust, and there's an ecosystem there that's turning out to have a whole new level of life that we haven't realized before existed. And that's, again, more resources, stuff we've never grown in culture, more material to understand how it evolved, how it survives, what is good about that's allowing it to continue to survive under these extreme conditions, and what potential benefit can we get from using some of those resources. So that is
this basically Woods Hole that's doing that, since you
no,
really don't have the equipment to go
well,
get
the thing
it?
with the boats, with the ships, it's part of a national fleet of oceanographic ships, and they have different homes. And Woods Hole does have one of the ships. The fleet, there's some at Scripps, there's some at Woods Hole. They're distributed around other harbors. We now have a dock, and we'll be able to take the medium class ships that are part of the fleet can come in here now. But the flagship of the scientific drilling, and that's a whole other subject in itself, is called the Resolution, and it is able, this is sort of a little schematic of it, it's able to go down to the ocean floor and put in essentially, they make a hole and sort of cork it and then put in instruments down into the crust to be able to take samples to measure conditions, and it's actually an observatory, sort of a subsea floor observatory. Then the scientists come back and collect the information and put in other kinds of instruments to be able to study more things.
And do they have to get their measurements on site, or can they get them by satellite?
I think it's well set. I think it's both right now. They're mostly able to go and get this. They want the physical samples. That's what these rocks are actually. Yeah, it's like moon rocks. They're actually looking at rocks that are down there, and they're bringing up a core on the ship and starting to see it there. So it's a new technique that hasn't been going on for that long, and we have one of the scientists that's in the forefront of this. So it's the Deep Biosphere Lab is what we call it here, and its potential again for energy, for a number of things is really tremendous. So, okay, again, quickly, we can sort of go further with that by talking about how these organisms live and why is it that they can in fact survive and metabolize and grow. One of the kinds of organisms there are the iron oxidizing bacteria that people are finding. This is David Emerson, who is the director of the geobiology, whatever it is.
Geomicrobiology.
Thank you. I'm going to have a long day. Geomicrobiology lab, and maybe you can very quickly, in like a minute, tell them why iron oxidizing bacteria are a focus of our research.
So yeah, our lab studies these bacteria that live on iron in the deep ocean, and so they get their energy from iron. Interested in that for a number of reasons. We get funding from NASA because there could be these types of metabolisms that could be going on in Mars or other planets because iron is very abundant. In the ocean, they tend to be relegated to these hydrothermal vent systems, but we think in the ancient past, when there was a lot less oxygen in the atmosphere, they probably were much more predominant throughout the ocean. And so we use these submersibles to go down to the deep sea vents and collect these iron mat samples, which are shown here and here. And so these can be very extensive, and they're usually associated with undersea volcanoes. And the amazing thing is that all this rust that you see here, basically that's what they're forming, is rust. It's all biogenic, so it's being formed by the bacteria themselves. And they're pretty cool because they make these sort of mineral structures here. So there's a cell actually right there at the end, but it's spitting out all this stock material, which is basically an iron oxide with a little bit of organic matter associated with it. And so we're trying to understand how they do that, how they make their living, who they are. We're getting a handle on who they are. We still don't really have a good idea of how they actually oxidize iron.
They're part of by a corrosion problem.
And then we also get funding from the Navy to study their role in biocorrosion, because they can, if you put a piece of steel out here in the bay, within a few days it'll get colonized by these bacteria, because they can live on the iron that's in the steel. And so we have various basic science interests, and the corrosion is more of an applied area, and we're also interested in these iron oxides are very reactive with lots of other organisms and organic material, other metals. They're very good filters, and they're sort of nanostructures. This is about a micron in diameter, and it's actually made up of these actual little threads, which are sort of about 50 nanometers in size. And this is actually an artist's rendition of this from a local Goose Bay artist. Found these things pretty fascinating, and they're really fun to look at in the microscope because they do form some really neat structures.
And I think you have one of the best labs. I wanted them to get a sense of the light and so forth. Thanks. Yeah,
sure.
That's a great. Okay, so this is then the geomicrobiology lab. That's some of the work that they do down in Hawaii and the volcanoes down there. And that's where Jason, the submersible, go down and collect this stuff. This gives you a pretty good view of the shore facility and the dock. And as I said, that will be open this afternoon, or if you want to come back another time, we can go down there and have a particular piece of that discussion down there. Lots of light. We do have shades, but we're not putting them down today.
Now, where's this ladder? Access to the roof for science?
Yeah, to the roof. Actually, it's for the air handling systems and so forth up there. So we need to be able to.
There's no observation deck on the roof?
Not yet. No, we're hoping. I think at some point we plan to have a green roof up there. And
good.
Stuff.
Good.
So, again, it's funding, and hopefully we'll find some contributors who would want to be part of making that happen.
Any solar?
Yes, yes. In fact, that is what put us over the top, I believe, for the platinum.
And it's on the roof?
The solar, yeah, there is solar that's running the seawater system. So come on in here. We're right in a facility here that is the National Center It's the Congress designated this function here at Bigelow as the official collection of marine phytoplankton for the United States. So it is a service facility in that other scientists from all over, actually all over the world, can get in touch with this facility. It's called the National Center for Marine Algae and Microbiota, and we call it NCMA for short. It has been around since the early 80s and was developed. The technology that I was talking about growing the algae, figuring out how to do that was done by the person who is still on our, he's an emeritus researcher now. His name is Robert Guillard, and his colleague Luigi Provasoli back in Woods Hole developed the way to do this, and then because they needed more space and wanted to actually move the collection, it came to Bigelow and grew from there. So this is where we now have up close to 4,000 strains of algae growing in chambers, growing at different temperatures depending where they came from. Researchers send us samples when they're out at sea. They're all cataloged here. We have curators who keep them growing. Some of them need to be, they need to be restarted every couple weeks, some of them every couple months. So it's a really intensive process. It's kind of like a living library. And all of it is in different, as I said, in different chambers at different temperatures. We have the responsibility of keeping it all going. It's got backup downstairs. As many of them that can be backed up are backed up by cryopreservation. So we have some of them frozen. Some of them are just in a backup system that runs on a separate generator. So if anything goes wrong, we will still have the collection. It's kind of the Amazon.com of algae is the goal here, where they have a website. You can get on the website, you can order your strain of algae. They will grow as much of it as you need for your research or for your applications and ship it out to you. We have about, I think, at least several orders going out every day, all over the world. This is researchers in industry and in basic research in universities. And aquaculture people are very interested in all of this, so that's what's going on. These chambers, we're not going to go in there right now, but if you come down a little further, yeah, you can kind of see that each one of them operates independently of the other. We have in the back is where the curators work. They literally take individual samples, put new medium in, and grow them at the different temperatures. If anything goes wrong, alarms go off, beepers go off. They need to keep the algae going. So this is the U.S. collection of the stuff. They've recently added marine bacteria, which is some of what we were just talking about, the iron oxidizing bacteria, and marine viruses, which are a very, very important part of the global ecosystem, which we'll talk about in a second. So anyway, this is the collection. It's possible also to come and get a tour of it. These are test tubes for the most part with green or red or things inside at the bottom. You can see them a little bit. Some of them are larger, that are actually more like macroalgae, but it's sort of the source. Oh, they're all alive. Yeah. The frozen ones are frozen, but they come back to life. Once through cryopreservation. Yeah, well, they're plants, so we haven't. I don't know if we're cryopreserving bacteria yet, but we'll probably work on it. Okay, so if we then come out this way, we'll go upstairs. Go across and go upstairs. Okay. One thing I should point out, this lab is available for businesses and companies who want to come and do specific research with our scientists. We're calling it the Industrial Collaboration Laboratory, and that is kind of another branch that we're developing to start to have partnerships with the private sector and do research that is easily marketable. So that's devoted to that kind of work.
Do they rent or lease the space?
It's usually a contract arrangement where, by working with the researchers, it's part of the arrangement to do that. Okay. So now we're in the second wing, Oceans and Climate. That's Barney, yes it is. Barney will be playing later. You're going to be playing music? Yeah.
Yeah, we're in.
Nice.
Doing a song or two?
Yeah. Okay, so this is the Oceans and Climate Level 1, and we've got a number of elements to this: the Marine Optics Laboratory and the Remote Sensing and Ocean Observing Laboratory. This features one of our most photogenic parts of the laboratory, one of our most photogenic elements, and that is Henry, which is our Slocum glider. Henry is named for Henry Bigelow, and it is part of our ability to go long distances from, in this case, from Portland to Nova Scotia by itself and take measurements of a number of things in the water: the salinity, the amount of chlorophyll, in other words, how much phytoplankton productivity there is there, and temperature, that sort of thing. It has been part of a system that Barney Balch, our senior scientist at this lab, has been running across the Gulf of Maine for now, I think it's in its 13th year, to measure the changing conditions in the Gulf. As over 13 years, it's a pretty, well, Barney, you could tell them. How long is it? 14 years now?
14 years.
Yeah, 14 years. Time flies. Can you just give them a quick look
Sure.
here? Okay.
So this is the 3 minute?
3 minutes.
3 minutes, okay. So we've been using ships of opportunity, oceanographic vessels, as well as ferries that go between Portland, Maine and Yarmouth, Nova Scotia. And we've been running a line, basically, it crosses the Gulf of Maine at its widest spot. And we've developed a time series over these 14 years in which we're looking at things like the primary productivity of the Gulf, the chemistry, the nutrient chemistry, hydrography, how the temperature and salinity changes, and basically every time we do this, it's like taking the pulse of the Gulf of Maine, one trip across and back. And a couple of years ago, we started using this autonomous glider, which is a robot, which goes out for 26 days, and it's equipped with devices for measuring temperature and salinity. It measures the light coming down, as well as light coming up from underneath. In different wavelengths, and we can use that information to figure out how much particulate matter there is in the Gulf, how much dissolved organic matter, which comes out of rivers. And it runs on...
What depth does it run at?
It goes down, we take it down to 180 meters, and it's capable...
Transit?
So it basically sawtooths its way across. It has no propeller, no moving parts except the fin here, which is the only control surface, and it adjusts its buoyancy by a piston that moves in and out here. It's like the kids' toys, the Cartesian diver. You squeeze the bottle and the little diving bell drops. Well, this is the same thing. It's ballasted to within a couple of grams of neutral, so it weighs about 75 kilograms, but it's ballasted so it is almost exactly neutral, and so the throw of that piston will either make it sink or come up. And so it sawtooths its way across the Gulf. And it takes, like I say, 13 days to go over to Yarmouth and 13 days to come back. Every 6 hours it surfaces. It has a little air bladder, like a whoopee cushion, here, a really fancy whoopee cushion that inflates when it gets to the surface every 6 hours, sticks its tail up out of the water, because there are 3 antennas in here. There's an iridium satellite communication antenna, GPS, so it knows where it is, and an Argos transmitter, which is sort of a last resort. If there were a problem, we'd be able to still find it. And then basically it sends a little bit of data, just a sample of data, and then it says, okay, you know, everything's fine, I don't sense any leaks. If it senses any leaks, it comes right up and it basically does what's called an abort, and we have to go fetch it, which is no fun. And then it releases the air out of the bladder and it sinks. I can show a quick video if you, yeah.
Does it store most of the data then?
It stores, it only telemeters back. Telemetering data is very expensive. So it stores all the data on a card inside, which we pull out. Just pull this up. So this is the track of the last mission that we did. We put it in south of Seguin Island, and it comes down and basically joins the line. These are waypoints, and it makes its way across, and the eastward extent of the transect is pretty much set by the tides. The tides are very strong over here. And so then basically it comes to the surface, and we decide here it's time for Henry to come home, and we telemeter up that he's got to turn around, turn his course, and set the waypoints back for this guy, and that. And it'll surface here 13 days later within 50 feet of the spot that we pick.
Can you talk about what you've learned over the last 13 years?
Yeah.
From Henry?
So
The trend, anyway.
we just published a paper in April, which showed increasing temperature. So we actually been doing this 14 years, but Charlie Yench, the guy whose picture is out there in the hallway, he was running this line on the Marine Evangeline back in the 70s. And we basically combined his data with ours, so we have a 35-year record. Temperature's been increasing incrementally, statistically significant. Salinity's been decreasing, which we attribute probably to ice cap melting, water which feeds into the Gulf of Maine here. And in 2007, there was really a catastrophic drop in the primary productivity of the Gulf. I mean, a drop by a factor of 5.
What do you mean by primary productivity?
This is the growth of the phytoplankton on which all life in the ocean depends. That was the bad news. The good news was in 2012, it's come back up again. And so the paper, which is on the wall there behind you, is all about the reasons why we think that happened. And but it was very serious drop in productivity, which will translate to
Barney, they can talk to you later this afternoon.
Yes.
If you want to show the
Yeah.
video.
Oh yes. Yeah. Tatiana's
Isn't
my
it fun?
minder
I
here.
love this part. It's interrupting. Yeah, Barney's very calm about talking about Henry now. I was with him on the day they launched it the first time, and that was a
A little
pretty,
hyper, was he?
Oh,
pretty exciting
scary.
day
I mean,
for
it's
Barney.
when you clip the tether to this thing, we run it through tests while it's tethered.
We have a photo of that.
And it is very, very scary.
There he goes.
And you developed the robot?
No, it was built by a company called Webb Scientific down in Falmouth, Massachusetts. It was the brainstorm of an oceanographer years ago by the name of Hank Stone. So the diver here is trying to keep up with Henry, who does about a half a knot. And so we programmed it to go down to the bottom of what's called the yoe, and then he actually made his buoyancy so he would float, and now he's on his way up. Now the diver's going to go underneath here, and so you can see some of the optical sensors. You'll see some flashing lights, which it's measuring the fluorescence of chlorophyll, phytoplankton chlorophyll. You can see it right there. And then there's a blue light that you can also see. That's measuring chlorophyll fluorescence. The white light is measuring the particulate matter in the water. And so it's life in slow motion. And that's Henry,
All right.
after Henry Bigelow.
Yes.
So it's-
Okay, we'll be back.
Yeah.
Thanks,
Sure, you bet.
House, everybody. All right. I think given the time we have, let's go to the third wing and look at the seawater facility. So, Center for Ocean Health, looking at the health of the organisms and their effect on conditions in the ocean, things like harmful algal blooms, also just food web, all kinds of implications of how changes in the ocean change things. This is Cynthia Heil. Dr. Heil is the head of the Harmful Algal Bloom Phytoplankton Ecology Laboratory. And if you have 2 minutes to try to describe what's going on here, that would be great.
Well, we just moved over from the other campus about 2 weeks ago, and so we're just settling in. I study harmful algal blooms, which are basically a subset of phytoplankton, the single-celled plants in the ocean. Why they're important are A, because they can kill you, B, because they cost a lot of marine-based industries a lot of money, and they kill what we call the charismatic megafauna, whales, dolphins, manatees, because there's a lot of them contain toxins. And some of the most lethal toxins on Earth are actually in these marine microscopic plants. And we're studying their ecology, how they make a living, what we can do to better manage them. Maine does manage for red tide. They do a very good job of it. You don't hear about people getting sick from red tide very often. And how we can control and prevent and mitigate these blooms. So minimize their impacts on people and the environment.
That's
2 minutes.
Yes, I'm very, very pleased.
Welcome to the Center of Ocean Health, too.
Yeah, it's
It's
the
beautiful.
latest one and the beautiful. Yeah,
Oh, it's spectacular.
Brand new, really brand new.
Yes, that's in a couple of weeks, brand new.
Yeah. Okay, so we'll have an open house later and more people can ask you questions. So, okay, if you've noticed, each wing has its own color scheme. This is the green wing. We had the orange wing and the blue wing. So we're going to go downstairs here and see the seawater pumping station. Lots of air and light again, but if you come in here, what I was mentioning, we have the shore facility that pumps water up here to the sea filtration system so that we can actually manage the water and make it whatever conditions we want for the experiments that we use here. The seawater pumping is run by solar energy, and that is part of our ability to become designated as a platinum facility because we are using solar to do that. The seawater then is pumped into this area, and then different mixtures of chemicals and other ways to simulate environments are prepared here, and that goes up here into the mesocosm facility. This is a little bit, when we say mesocosm, that's like, what we really mean is really large aquarium. However, it doesn't have the see-through walls that a normal aquarium would because it's experimental, and so they want to control the amount of light. They want to control the amount of nutrients. It's all individually done. This is the first one in Maine that has this kind of capacity to do this. We're going to come upstairs. It's kind of fun to see how it works. Very large tanks. The kind of work that you can do here is to, as I think I mentioned downstairs, simulate different conditions in the ocean, introduce different materials, simulate a toxic spill, simulate an oil spill, simulate what to do, with the dispersants, what the effect of dispersants that are used are any number of conditions: warming, temperature, more acidification, any kind of work to be able to see what happens in the ecosystems. This gives you a little bit of an idea of what they're dealing with. And then this is what can be used to sample, then again, isolate cells, see how the conditions have changed, what's going on in there. So there's the usual way to describe how much life there is in a teaspoon of seawater. There's usually about 1 million cells in normal seawater, 1 million individual living cells of bacteria and algae and viruses all the time. And so all of this is running the ocean in many ways, let's say that. They are interacting with one another and affecting everything else that is in the food web, which ultimately affects the fisheries, which affects, and it turns out is affecting what happens with clouds and climate as well. It's a very, very integrated system. So anyway, this is one of the kinds of experiments that they're going to be doing here.
When did the food chain turn into the food web?
Quite a while ago, because there's so many different options. It's still a chain in terms of levels: small things, medium things eating the small things, bigger things eating the medium things, except for a few exceptions. But there's so many interactions within them that it sort of became impossible to just make a straight line.
Right. Okay.
And we didn't do this on purpose for you. This is still getting, since we said this is a brand new facility as of like 2 days ago. They're still working on getting the algae growth chambers up and running. So we don't actually right now are using these colors. But this will be where when a company or a scientist requests a volume of algae, a lot, not just a test tube, this is where they'll grow this and package them up, and UPS or FedEx these things out of here in dry ice if necessary, and in packing to get them overnight to where they need to go. But we will finally be able to make large volumes, which is what the biofuel industry is really interested in. So that's kind of very quick, 3 wings, all working together. We've got, as those of you who were just listening to Graham heard, we're announcing today that we made platinum status for the U.S. Green Building Council. We are only the 4th building in Maine, the only public or institutional building in Maine that has that status. We're extremely pleased about that because that's part of the whole idea here is we're trying to figure out how to understand what's going on in the environment in terms of how the ocean interacts with it, and also obviously to be able to have as minimal an impact as we can while we do that. So that platinum thing is the platinum designation is just a few days old, and so that's our big announcement today. We're the first facility in Maine, the first science lab in Maine to have platinum status, and we're still underway. And it's only the 7th in the New England area. The other ones in Maine are Hanford and Augusta, and TD Call Center, TD Bank Call Center, and the Coastal Botanical. I'm not sure where the call center is, but the Coastal Botanical Gardens are out here. So there's 2 right in Booth Bay. Founders, yeah, Charles Yanch and his wife Clarice came from Massachusetts and founded the lab in 1974. He was a pioneer of ocean color work. So hi, Chris. I just see you here. All right. So then,
what's your scope in terms of global research?
Okay,
you studied the Damariscotta estuary, or?
Well, it's pretty much everything from the coast right here, Damariscotta. We're on the Damariscotta estuary now. I've been doing a dock study for years at the other facility in Booth Bay Harbor that we're now going to continue to sample there. So coastal to the Gulf of Maine, to the North Atlantic, to every ocean in the world, including the polar regions and the deep water. And now we have scientists who are actually looking at the sub-sea floor ecosystem, what's in the ocean crust and in the sediments.
That's going to require some kind of submersible.
We
right?
work with submersibles, often in collaboration with Woods Hole, with Jason. We just had a couple scientists come back from an expedition to the Mid-Atlantic Ridge, where they were using Jason to get samples from 3 miles down. And so really every ocean and the polar seas is where these scientists go. They bring the work back here. At this point, we have 15 senior scientists, and most of them have either postdoctoral students working with them, or research technicians and associates. Altogether, the lab is currently employing 70 people, and the projection by 5 years from now is to be up to 100. We've grown very fast, and not just physically, but in terms of the plant over the last 2 years, but in terms of hiring. We had 8 senior scientists a couple of years ago, then between 8 and 11 they come in, depending on how you count them. Most of them come from all over the world. We have a very international cadre of scientists. A lot of our hiring, though, has been very local lately. The other thing, I don't know, we were one of the named by the program, one of the best places to work in Maine in 2012, which is not surprising.
Physical, yeah.
Yeah, it was great. We were 9th out of 32 in our category, so that was a great thing as well. So we're on the way here. It's
where
pretty
do these
exciting.
scientists live? You don't have a dormitory or anything?
No, they all live in the area. I think commute, some of them are as far away as Brunswick, but a lot of them live in the Boothbay, on the Boothbay Peninsula, or up in Damascus, Newcastle area, up in Alna. It's kind of in this area, so it's the mid-coast very much. All right. Okay, so if you want to go listen to the seminar, any of you, you're totally welcome.